Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this Let's Name Every Ship in Star Citizen video and give them all a brief description. We're actually slowly reaching towards the end of this series. I think this is going to be the third last video, because I think this is going to be the last major manufacturer. We'll do sort of all the other human manufacturers next, and then we'll do the last one, the Vanduul, on their own right at the end that we don't get. So yes, Aegis Dynamics. Let's jump right in and give Aegis Dynamics themselves a brief description. Aegis Dynamics are one of the old school military manufacturers that don't really dip their toes into the civilian market. They have been around for a long time. They used to make almost all the military ships. They've been the main military contractor for a long time, with Anvil giving them a good run for their money these days. But these guys used to be the main ship supplier during the Tevarin Wars, the Messer regime, like all the back in the day kind of stuff. These guys were the main supplier of ships and that sort of stuff. There is one thing I want to note that I forgot to say in the MISC video. The Aegis and MISC do have a collaboration ship that they build together, and we mentioned it in the MISC video, and it is more of a MISC ship than an Aegis ship, so we're just going to leave it alone in the MISC video. And that is the Starfarer Gemini, where in the MISC video we talked about it, and it's the military variant of the Starfarer. It's MISC make the Starfarer, then they give it to Aegis, and then Aegis militaryify it, basically. It's sort of a collaboration between the two to make it into a military resupply ship instead of just a civilian resupply ship. So with that all said and done, let's jump in and talk about their first ship series alphabetically, which is the Avenger. The Avenger Titan we're going to talk about first, because that's the base model, and then we're going to talk about how its variants change things up a bit afterwards, as per usual, the same as we always do, just to speed things up a bit. Everything we talk about the Avenger Titan, then we'll talk about how the others change it. I've already described that. I don't know why I'm describing it twice, but yes, the Avenger Titan. This used to be the main military fighter. It is one of the oldest ships models we can fly in the game, so maybe the one you're flying about is newer constructed, but this chassis, this model of ship, has been flying around for a very long time, and you can see that in its design. It's very reminiscent of like a space shuttle from when I was a little kid. They used to use back to get in and out of space before the shuttle program was shut down completely. It's got that sort of white top and the sort of black thermal underneath look for re-entry to planets. People call it the Space Penguin. A lot of people really love the Avenger tail. They love the aesthetics. I'm not too keen on its aesthetics. But what is it? What does it do? It is basically a premium starter ship, is a good way to describe it. It is not a full step up the ladder from a starter ship. It is just a starter ship on steroids, kind of so to speak. So whereas, say, a Cutlass Black would be a full step up, like, it is not a starter ship, it is a full step up on the ladder to larger ships. This is like a 1.2 on the ladder, where a starter ship's 1, Cutlass is 2, this is a 1.2. Then something like the Nomad is trying to be a 1.5, but I don't really feel it sort of pulls that off as efficiently. I think it's more like a 1.5 leaning into trade only, so it sort of loses that versatility. This is just a pure, true 1.2 on that ladder. It has a great amount of firepower. This thing has one hell of a good amount of firepower for a starter ship, which is a sort of callback to its days as the main fighter of the military, which obviously has been out of commission for a long time now. It got replaced with the Hornets that we talked about in the Anvil video. Just want to make sure I'm not getting Anvil and Aegis. Yeah, Anvil video. I was like, wanting to make sure I wasn't getting Anvil and Aegis muddled up in the wrong way around. But yes, the Avenger Titan has got a good amount of storage, really good amount of firepower. It has bed, and well, it has a bed inside it, so you're going to be able to log in and out. It's a starship. We've talked a lot about starships, and they've got a sort of generic all-round role when we're talking about other ships. I don't really feel like we need to re-go over all that stuff again. Yeah, I've talked too long about it already, mainly to do with its looks and that sort of stuff. I'm meant to be giving them a brief description. So that's the Avenger Titan. How does its variants change things up? Well, first of all, you've got the Avenger Stalker, which you're losing some of that cargo capacity, which I think I did say. I did say the Avenger Titan has a good amount of cargo capacity. I think I did. If I didn't, it does. But you're losing some of that cargo capacity to gain these sort of cells in the back that you can throw people into, and then you could see this as your sort of starting ship that leans into bounty hunting. You've got those sort of pods, you can go around, hunt people down, throw them in the back, and then take them to receive your bounties. Then you've got the Avenger Warlock that once again loses the cargo capacity, and it gains a EMP device for like stunning enemy ships, destroying their power stuff. You know what I mean? You know what an EMP does? It like boom, sends out that pulse, and like, oh no, all my electronics is not working. One of those, like a Stalker and a Warlock working in collaboration, will be a great bounty hunting pair. So the Warlock is like an interdiction, that sort of ship type thing for pouncing on prey and taking them out, that kind of thing. And then you've got the Stalker is the bounty hunting variant. Then there is one more variant which we don't get access to, at least not for now, is the Avenger Trainer, which is basically just an Avenger Titan with 2 seats so that it can be used to train pilots, which is one of the military's main uses. Like, the military is mainly using them to train their new pilots. Nothing really to talk about with the Avenger Trainer. There is the Renegade, which is mainly just it's just a Titan with a different paint job and a different gun loadout by default, so it's not really worth mentioning. So yes, that is the Avenger series, a very, very good starter ship. I used to recommend this as the sweet spot to go to. Like, I think if you could get yourself a Mustang starter pack and upgrade it to Avenger Titan, that is just perfection as far as I'm concerned. No need to go further than that. It's a great fallback. One hell of a good starter ship. Probably the best starter ship in the game. The Avenger Titan. I'm not 100% sold on its looks, but I know a lot of people are. Let's move on from the Avenger series and to the Cutter. Okay, the Cutter. We're not going to spend long here on this because there's next to no information shown. I don't even think there's been pictures released of it. The Cutter is basically just a small remote-controlled drone, and we know they are included in the Reclaimer. We don't know if they're going to be included in other things as far as I'm aware. And you basically use these to go out and explore ships you're salvaging, try and find some juicy components in the exterior. So it's like a remote control drone. You fly into the enemy ship, well, the salvage ship, not an enemy ship. You explore it, you like cut out some component, and then this little drone then carries it back. It makes it a lot safer. You don't have to get out and physically do it, because who knows, maybe there'll be some Gene Stealers or the Star Citizen equivalent inside one of these hulks one day that you're sitting trying to clear out of its juicy components and other stuff. We know next to nothing about it. We've seen next to nothing about it. I don't even think we've got a picture. Let's move on to the Eclipse. The Eclipse. It does what it says in its style. And you should instantly get what I mean by that. If you see the pictures of this thing, you see if I've got a video or pictures in the background, I don't know what it'll be yet. You can see it is very, very stylized towards the looks of a stealth bomber, because it is a stealth bomber. It does what it says in the tin. It's got some very powerful missiles, and it is a missile bomber, not a style bomb. And it's stealth. So just think of a stealth fighter without the Daka missiles instead, and you're pretty much hitting the nail on the head with this thing. It is very powerful in places like Xenothreat, and I expect it to be in the future as well. It'll be great for like a squadron of these sneaking up and ambushing something like an Idris, getting their payloads off, and then disappearing before the Idris can like wake up and get ready to kill them will be an incredibly powerful, incredibly good thing to do. You're going to be able to catch ships out like an Idris really easily in Eclipses. And the main problem there is you're going to be really short distanced, so you're going to need something like a Karak to get you to position, or the Liberator to get you to position, and the Liberator is not going to be that stealthy, so you're going to try to, you know what I mean, there's going to be this, get close enough but not too close, and the Liberator take off from these, and yeah. Unless your opponent is just like a small quantum away, not going to be much of a problem there then, but then how's an opponent so close? Okay, we're getting into theory crafting here that we shouldn't really be doing. I'm meant to be giving brief descriptions. You know what this ship is. It's a stealth bomber. It's going to be absolutely perfect for that role. Alpha strike an enemy to death. Let's move on. Where's my notes? Where's my notes? Here they are. Moving on to the Gladius. The Gladius is one of the military's main fighters. It's quite an old design, and it is currently slowly being replaced by Lightnings. Both the Gladius and the Hornet are slowly being replaced by Lightnings, I do believe. I might be wrong on that. But yeah, it's a military fighter. It's does what it says it's on the tin. It's the military's premium light fighter. It's great as an interceptor, great as an escort. Not much else to say. It's got a good amount of firepower. It's got good maneuverability. It's got good armor. It's sort of, when it comes to the light fighters, it's a sort of jack of all trade, master of none. Where you've got, say, the Arrow, which is all about maneuverability, and it sort of sacrifices its armor and firepower a wee bit on that. If you imagine it as a triangle, this thing's sort of dead center. So like here's the Arrow down here in this, well, we'll say this corner of the triangle, and then this thing's more dead center of your triangle, where you've got firepower, armor, and maneuverability. And as you lean more into one, you're going to be sacrificing the others on this triangle. Saying it's an old design, but it's an old but gold design, and I mean in lure. It's an old but gold but design. One of the great reasons to have this ship in game at the moment is it's one of the few ships that is actually at gold standard, which is the standard they expect everything will be at release. So if you want a light fighter and you want it to be the this is definitely one of the ships to go for. Right, moving on to the Hammerhead. The Hammerhead is a ship a lot of people love and a lot of people hate, and a lot of people love and hate at the same time. It is a ship that doesn't really have much of a role in-game at the moment, but I think as fighters become... Weirdly enough, I'm going to say this ship is an anti-fighter ship. It is designed to be your flak your flak boat that protects and screens your ships that are vulnerable to fighters. And so it is really good at killing fighters, but I think as fighters become less prominent, the value of this ship is going to go up. And like, wait, what? What you said is that's what it's good for. I think that's because at the moment there is no need to protect ships from fighters, because fighters is all you're ever going to see when it comes to fighting at the moment. As capital ships start becoming more common and start becoming more of the meta, and fighters become less so of the meta for combat, like there will always be the dogfighting scene, but that's what I mean is like for the actual going round in the PU, like the bigger ships become more prominent, that's when it's going to be needed more, because they're still going to need protected by fighters. Fighters are never going to disappear. They're never going to become that redundant. It's just going to balance out. Then I think this ship will have a place. because at the moment there's no need to protect larger ships if there is no larger ships. Get what I'm saying? So as stuff like Pyro comes online and fighters aren't going to have the range to go anywhere they want at any time, and you're going to need to start putting fighters on larger ships to get them places, then something like a Hammerhead is going to become important. And one of the main reasons this ship is hated is its interior is once again, like the Starfarer we talked about in the Misc video, is seen as being made for an FPS level. A lot of the the corridors going up the middle where you can look out the window and see the corridor on the other side, people are like, what's the point? I don't want to look out a window just to see more of the ship. I want to look out a window and see stuff, not the ship, not more interior of the ship, not more. I want to see space basically when I look out the window. I don't want to see the ship. So yeah, there's that, and it's basically just a flying bus with lots of turrets over it. I really should stop rambling about it because I'm meant to be giving it a brief description. I do feel that it is going to be a really important ship to screen and to protect from fighters one day, and I think it will have a place. It's just for now, with fighters being so prominent and larger ships not being needed in games, they don't need protecting, so it's not really needed. So moving on to the Idris next. The Idris. Okay, there's 3 variants of the Idris. You've got the Idris P, the Idris K, and the Idris M. We'll just give a brief description of what changes them up at the moment. So you've got the Idris M, which is the original military variant of this ship, which has all its bells, all its whistles, a huge spinal sort of belly mount. You know, when you think spinal, you normally think of it being on the top of the ship, but it's spinal, but it's on the belly, underside of the ship. And it's this huge size 10 railgun, the biggest gun in-game at this point in time. The Idris is in-game. Oh, that's one thing we've not talked about. Let's go through things so far just quickly to give you an update. The Avenger series, all in-game. Cutter, not in-game. Eclipse, in-game. Yeah, everything's in-game so far, apart from the Cutter. So yeah, the Idris is kind of 50-50. The Idris is in-game at the moment, but only for us to fight against, or you can pilot one. There is ways people glitch themselves into the cockpit of this ship, and then they can fly around and use it, and then there's NPCs in the turrets kind of thing. So people have gotten to fly it, but the interior is completely unknown to us. CIG want to keep the interior hidden from us for as long as possible, because it's going to be one of the early bases for us in Squadron 42. So they're wanting to keep that hidden. They want our sort of first experience of it to be in Squadron 42 to give us that big bang, like, oh, this is home, wanting to explore it, this new vibe, this new feel. They're trying to capture that sort of new game experience as much as possible with the Idris. So that's why they're not letting us get our hands on the interior at the moment. Whether you agree or disagree with that, that's not what this video is about. I'm just telling you CIG's reasoning why the interior is not in-game at the moment, but the exterior is to fight against and fly around if you manage to glitch yourself into the cockpit. I've not really said what this ship is though so far. It is a sort of good jack of all trades, master of none, small capital ship. It has a really good cargo capacity. Its crew here in my notes is apparently 8 to 28, though I have seen the NPC crew in Squadron 42 I think was around 50 something, because they wanted a night and day shift cycle, so to speak, and they wanted it to feel more lived in. So that 8 to 28 is not going to be in Squadron 42. There is going to be a lot more, just so there's that night and day rotation, whereas I don't think that's going to be a thing in the PU. Maybe it will be. Maybe we're going to need to hire twice as many NPCs as we think, because we're going to need to cycle them out, let them have their night and day cycle. We really don't know. We don't know what NPC crew is going to be like. So yeah, there's that we've got to think about. But we're not here to talk about that. I'm getting distracted and I'm going off on a tangent. The Idris has space for 3 Gladiuses to land in its hangar, and it's got this sort of World War II inspired runway from a carrier. What's it? Airship carrier, yeah, the big wrongleads interior to it. So even though compare it to the Kraken for a second, the Kraken has that sort of World War II aircraft carrier look. This ship functions a lot more like a World War II airship carrier, and the fact is it sort of opens up, then it's got that long runway, and ships take off and land from that, and it's got a hole at the back as well that opens up. And lots and lots of armor, lots of firepower, large amount of cargo capacity for storing the resources it needs to go around and fight. So yeah, it's a lot of people liken it to the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek, because it's got that hangar capacity, it's good at fighting, it's good at carrying other ships. It'll be great for patrolling, it's got lots of armor, it'll be great at brawling. That's the Aegis. It is a capital-sized fighting ship that is sort of a jack-of-all-trades, master of none. It's got two variants, the Aegis M, then you've got the Aegis P, which is the... No. This is... Yeah, you've got the Aegis M, which is the military variant we just described. Then you've got the Aegis P, which is the civilian version of the Aegis, which has some of the armor taken away, has some of the guns taken away, including that big giant spinal armament. Then you've got the Aegis K, which is an Aegis P, which is the civilian variant, except then there's an aftermarket product that some companies sell that give you that big, huge spinal mount laser, and some front missiles, I do believe, as well. So it's an Aegis, civilian Aegis, slightly upgraded to try and get it closer to the military variant of the Aegis, and just to try and make it that really good at fighting again like it was in the military variant of it, which I think that's kind of cool. So like, it shows you how the company's being responsible. They're not wanting to sell military grade hardware to civilians, and then aftermarket people are like, oh, I've got the civilian variant, let's try and get it as close to the military grade as possible. And I think that's quite funny. I think that's quite... I could see that happening in real life kind of thing. That's the Aegis. It was kind of a big one to describe, and I spent too long rambling and going off on other stuff, so let's move on to the Javelin. The Javelin is a destroyer. It is a capital ship, bigger than an Aegis, designed to do nothing but absolutely duke it out. This thing is all about being really big and having lots of guns. It has lots of guns. These are in-game sometimes. So they're in-game, the exterior of the ship is in-game at events. So stuff like Fleet Week, when you'll see some of these in a Bengal patrolling around space, and you get to go up and you get to look at them, and you can try and fight them, and probably get your ass blown up by their massive amount of firepower. And also there in Xenofret, an ally, one of these, comes in and helps you kick Xenofret's butt in the Xenofret battles. And you also have to help resupply in the first phase so that you can take place in that battle in the first place. Unlike the Aegis, there is no way to glitch yourself into it to make sure you can fly around, which I think is a good thing. Well, you know what? I'll take that back. I don't think that's a good thing, because I think it would be fun, and I think people could do it nicely. But then again, because these are only event ones, you kind of spoil everyone else's fun, so I don't know where I stand on that, actually. But once again, they're not wanting to release the interior. I don't even know if the interior is done for this. The Aegis, I'm pretty sure the interior is done. I don't think it is for the Javelin. I think they've worked on it. I think they've got a rough plan, but I don't think it's done for the Javelin. I think they've started it, got it mapped out. Oh, actually, no, I take that back again. Some of the interior is done for the Javelin. Normally I'd restart this whole part, but I'm remembering bits as I go along. At Fleet Week, we actually get to see some of the interior of this ship, because we get to go on a tour, and we actually get to see some of the interior, so we at least know that some of the area of the interior is finished. So I take that all back. Some of the interior is definitely finished. But yeah, I'm meant to be giving it a brief description, so let's go back and summarize it for a brief description. Capital size, destroyer, ship. covered in guns, lots of crew, recommended 12 to 80 I've got here in my notes. Absolutely covered in turrets, some really big guns, great at destroying absolutely everything. It is going to be a brawling ship, it is going to be powerful, and this is going to be our, I've heard a lot of people describe it as, this is a raid ship. This is a raid level ship. Players can own these. It's the biggest ship that players are allowed to own at this point in time. For pure combat, like it's like, I think it might be the biggest ship. I'm not sure what's bigger, this or a Kraken. I think this is bigger. But it's definitely the most powerful on a one-to-one fight ship-wise that players can have their hands on. And it is going to take like at least 50 players on this ship. I think roughly 50 players would actually be quite good for it. To man all its stations, man all its guns, and then your org takes this in and does a raid equivalent, like the WoW raid equivalent. And maybe bring along some fighter support or something else. I don't know, maybe a couple of redeemers. Who knows? It's all theory crafting at that point. But this is your raid ship, as people describe it. Your full org is running this ship. Just duking it out. You'll be fighting other big ships, fighting little fighters, doing whatever the raid entails. Yeah. Whew. Right. Moving on to the Nautilus. The Nautilus is, once again, surprise surprise, a military ship. This one is not in game whatsoever, and as far as I'm aware is not being worked on at all. The Nautilus is a capital size ship. Oh, it's not, apparently, according to my notes thing here. It's a large ship. I thought it was bigger than that. I thought it was roughly the same size as the Hammerhead, and I thought it was a Corvette sort of size, like what Star Citizen calls Corvette. But apparently it's large according to this. I think that's not quite right. Its recommended crew is 4 to 8, and it's basically a mine laying ship. This ship's job is to go around, so a lot of people compare this to the Perseus, the Hammerhead, and the Polaris. Other ships are similar sort of sized, which CIG call Corvettes, and they see, like the Polaris specifically, they compare it to. The Polaris is quite offensively orientated, goes in, attacks, gets the job done. They see this as the defensive version of that, where it sort of lays mines, relies on the mines to protect its base or whatever, and does that sort of stuff instead, military-wise. I'm not 100% agreeing on that, because I see this as slightly more leaning out of the military, leaning more towards industrial, like, defense. That sort of side of things. I see it being quite a different sort of role. I don't see people that enjoy combat enjoying this ship. I see it more as, I don't know, it's a really hard one for me to place. I think it's going to be, it's a really insanely niche ship, and Polaris really isn't that much of a niche ship. It's just a combat ship, which is quite common, so it's not that much of a niche ship. This is an insanely niche combat ship. Its combat is completely defensive, it's laying mines, it likes to be backline support. It's had its brief description, so I'm going to stop talking about it and move on, because I'm trying to give it a good description, and I really should be giving it brief. Right, moving on to the Reclaimer. The Reclaimer is an industrial ship, and it's one of, if not the only, it's the only off the top of my head, but definitely one of the only industrial ships that Aegis makes, or civilian ships that Aegis makes. And it is, at the moment, the end of the line premium, the creme de la crop, the ultimate salvage ship. It is recommended a crew of 4 to 5, and only has a cargo capacity of 180 for such a large ship. That is kind of low, but most of the ship is taken up by a sort of giant factory, sort of salvage shredder type thing. So if you've ever seen those like car compactors that like turn the cars into little cubes, or the other stuff where you throw it in and it turns it into shreds, that's what the interior of this ship is all like. It's all for just gobbling up like destroyed ships, that kind of thing. It has the drones we talked about earlier for going into larger ships and taking out components first of all, and then you start gobbling up the ship. And the one thing that people love about this ship that they think makes it the coolest ship in game is it's got a giant claw that you can fire and grab and pull stuff back in to then tear apart and shred and eat. And one of the things people really want to do in this ship is steal ships, basically. They want to see someone going down, landing at I don't know, like a little facility, maybe like to do a trade run to buy some materials from like those little mining facilities we've got on moons at the moment, and instead they fly over as they're going in to buy their stuff, and this thing get the claw, joink, do a drive-by and just fly straight off. That is one thing people really want to do in this ship. They want to steal ships in it, and most stuff like the Vulture will be needing somebody to like help them tow it away to then go and sell at that point. Like one of the Argos with their tractor beams, or a couple of Cutlass Blacks or something with their tractor beams to pull the ship and go take it to a salvage yard to get torn down and turned to salvage. This ship gets to skip that stage completely. It can do it itself. It is a flying salvage yard. So yes. Moving on from the Reclaimer to the Redeemer. The Redeemer is actually a really good ship in game at the moment. The Hammerhead that we talked about earlier, the great way to think about the Redeemer is it's sort of like the halfway point between a fighter and that Hammerhead. It is technically a gunship, a medium gunship, and it is just covered in daka. This thing has 2 size 4s for the pilot. It has got 2 manned turrets and 2 unmanned turrets. One of those unmanned turrets can also be controlled by the pilot. Its recommended crew is 1 to 4, and this thing is just firepower galore. Its maneuverability is quite good for its size too. Its maneuverability is slightly worse than a heavy fighter, and I think this thing is just going to be incredibly powerful at taking down other fighters when used correctly. If you're going out and trying to dogfight in this, I think fighters are just going to be able to stay in your, like, fly around, try and stay in blind spots, so the turrets have quite good coverage. But yeah, dogfighting, this thing's going to be a wee bit questionable. But if you've got, say, 2 covering each other, or this thing's covering another ship, or it's got a bigger ship in its sort of blinder spot at its arse, fighters are not going to want to go near this thing. It is going to have so much firepower it can just spew out. It is. And then you could also change up its armaments. You could give it all cannons everywhere, and you could just obliterate larger ships. This thing is just firepower incarnate. This is what this is. It's for its size, firepower incarnate. Orcs, daka. It's a pretty powerful ship in game, and I can't wait for stuff like Xenofret, where I think this ship is going to be insanely powerful if we get to do Xenofret or something like that again, because it's just going to be great. And it's going to be one of the first ships in game that really make turrets great, because those turrets are 2 size 5s. And that's a hell of a lot of firepower. That is a lot of firepower, because up until this point, like, why really take, like, if you're in, say, a Vanguard, why get someone in the turret instead of getting them in an arrow or a second Vanguard? The pilot just has that much firepower. It's like, and if the ship gets blown up, you're only losing half your firepower, not all of it. Whereas now, the firepower from turrets and the way turrets work, with their more consistent fire and that sort of stuff, is starting to make turrets better in DPS. So I'm really looking forward to the sort of changes in this. And this is going to be the first. This is going to mean so much more, especially when Pyro starts coming online and the power starts shifting. Whereas fighters are going to stop being the be-all and end-all. And the Redeemer has already started this sort of bigger ships are starting to become a thing. And with the like distance and travels getting up, this I see this, the Redeemer is going to be insanely good really soon. And I think the Redeemer, until we start seeing stuff like Hammerheads and even bigger ships that are not designed to fight fighters start becoming prominent, I think the Redeemer is going to be the meta for a while once Pyro comes online. Just because it's going to have the enough fuel capacity to get you everywhere and not need to, even if you're not traveling far, to not have to refuel as much. Yeah, but I've talked about the Redeemer too much already. We're meant to be just giving it a brief description. So let's move on to the Retaliator and the Retaliator Bomber. I said two ships there, though there is really just technically one ship. And whatever you do, if you're buying this with real money outside of game, do not buy the bomber variant. Whatever you do, you can get two base versions for the price of one bomber version. So if it's when it comes to Fleet Week and you're looking at the Retaliator and you're thinking about buying one, whatever you do, do not buy the goddamn bomber unless it's nothing but a part of a CCU chain. I don't understand why there's such a big price difference. It's stupid, in my opinion. The Retaliator base. Oh. I better go right back again. Had to get changed because I got peed on by a guinea pig. But moving on. Not moving on, but continuing on. The Retaliator. Yes, the base model. $150 outside of game. For the bomber, not even variant, just we'll describe what makes it different in a second. The bomber, $300. What? Okay, let me describe what's different then between the base and the bomber. The base, you get the base model. What is the Retaliator? It's a sort of stealth multi-crew ship. A slightly smaller stealth constellation would be a great way to put it, with a modular bay that will let you swap in and out lots of different modules to make this ship have like different roles. It has a sort of very sort of submarine sort of vibe. It's sort of based heavily on stealth submarines from World War II, and it's sort of got a sort of bomber. What do they call them? The Sky Fortress? I can't remember their name. Was it A42? You know what I mean? The Sky Fortress, the huge planes that came over and dropped lots of bombs and had lots of turrets. It's sort of like a cross between a submarine and that, and it's sort of inspiration into what it's looks like and stylized on the interior, not the exterior. Has living space for everyone to live on. That's what I'm saying. It's like a stealth constellation with modularity instead of like a constellations like Jack of all trades. This thing sort of loses its sort of Jack of all trades to gain this modular bay that's sort of going to give it the Jack of all trades stuff back. In the Retaliator base, that's the base model. Now, the bomber model, the Retaliator bomber. What's different? Well, with the Retaliator bomber, you get the Retaliator base with that with a module already in it for holding torpedoes, very large torpedoes. That's it. So this module that isn't even going to be that expensive in game is going to cost nowhere near as much as the ship. Wouldn't be surprised if it has some sort of military rep grind you need to do before you're allowed to buy it. But then there should be a civilian version that's like you can buy and put in anyway that does almost as good a job. Doubles the price of the ship. What makes it even worse is the Retaliator that is in game. There is only one of, and it is the Retaliator bomber with this module already in it, because the modularity is not in game and you can't swap its modules, so it just has the bomber module by default and you can't take it out. So even if you buy a Retaliator base, you're getting the bomber, and you can have two bombers for the price of one. And then once the modularity comes online, you can have two for the price of one. Still, I just do not understand why the bomber is so much more expensive than the base. Right. Moving on from the Retaliators to the Saber. The Saber is a lot of people's favourite fighter ship. It is a stealth fighter. It is small. I think it's a medium fighter, but it is all about stealth and space superiority. It has got quite a good amount of firepower. It is slightly on the fragile side, but nothing like the fragility of an arrow. It is slightly on the fragile side, but still tanky in comparison to, say, an arrow. There we go. I was able to say the words properly and pronunciate my letters, at least to my not dorsal tones. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked and going off on a tangent. Yeah, a lot of people really love this ship. A lot of people think it looks like really, really cool. I think it's okay. I think it's good at everything. It's really good at stealth. That's really what it is. It's a fighter designed towards stealth. This will be great for covering like stealth incursions into the enemy, where you say want to have a couple of stealth bombers go in and drop off some bombs, or some stealth troop transports dropping an elite squad behind enemy lines, but you don't want to send them in completely unprotected. So you send in a couple of stealth fighters to give them that sort of air protection on the way in. This will be great for something like that. It'll be great for alpha strikes, ambushes. It'll be, yeah, it's a stealth fighter. It is the premium stealth fighter when it comes to fighting and stealth. Not much else to say here. You can see why a lot of people love it. They love the aesthetics, they love its role, and yeah. Moving. Oh, it does have one variant, which is the Saber Raven, which has some. It's a high-tech variant, and it has mainly used for information. Like, it's got some information broker type stuff. It's meant to be for getting your like a messenger almost, like your high, like really juicy piece of intel needs to stealthily get from A to B. It's still got all its fighting capabilities. It's just got this high tech intelligence. It can do intelligence missions. We really do not know what this is going to look like. I'm guessing it's just going to mainly be like a courier, like an information broker type ship, like a tiny fighter variant of the Mercury Star Runner. We really don't know much about the Saber Raven, what that's going to look like. So we're moving on to the Vanguard series. Now the Vanguards, these are sort of, they are a modular ship, and it is weird. They're sort of a cross between a series and just like the Retaliator base, one ship with different modules. It's not quite like the Retaliator, it's not quite like a series. It's sort of its own unique thing. I'll describe what I mean there. It's so the different ships here, you've got the Warden, the Harbinger, Hoplite, and Sentinel. They are different. They have they have different armors. They have different thickness of armors, but they have in the back a modular bay, which each of them start with a different modular bay by default that has a defined role, and it gives the ship a defined role. But you can take one of them and give them the modular bay from a different one. So it's, yeah, so okay, we'll get in and describe it anyway. The base is the Warden. And it's a heavy fighter. It's really based off World War II heavy fighters, has that strong sort of aesthetic. And its whole point of a heavy fighter is just to give a fighter class ship much longer range. And that is what this ship is really about. It's the long range military fighter. So Like in World War II, you needed heavy fighters to protect your bombers when they were traveling really far to go on a bomber run away from their base. So if you don't have a carrier to get your ships as close as you would like, and you need a wee bit more long range, you're going to be looking at Vanguards instead of like your stereotypical Gladiuses and arrows in your military fleet. These used to be the meta when it came to the combat. There has been some nerfs to its maneuverability recently. I expect it will probably get some buffs when it gets its gold standard or something, because it needs to be brought back up a wee bit. They are obviously in-game at this point in time, but we will now describe the variants, so to speak. So you've got the Harbinger, which is a slightly upgraded towards a bomber, so it has a bombing bay as its modular back instead of just the living compartments that the Warden has. Then you've got the Hoplite, which is a sort of like a troop transport that's a sort of fighter troop transport sort of cross, which is kind of weird. It's described as being good for boarding. Then you've got the Sentinel, which gives you electronic warfare, etc, etc. So this is a weird one, because what I really don't understand is why not just take the one with the best armor, which I think's either the Warden or the could be the Harbinger. I don't think it's the Sentinel. I think the Sentinel's got like a different EMP style armor. But why don't you just take the one that has the best armor and then swap its module out for the style of gameplay you want? I don't really see the need for this ship to be a series. I think it should be just like the Retaliator. And I don't understand why it's just trying to be both a series and like the Retaliator have these different things. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand what's going on here. It's kind of like making it more complicated than it needs to be. I think they should just go back to, because we already know as well that you're going to be able to buy different armors and stick different armors on ships. So what makes this one different? Like, could you take the armor off of a Harbinger and put it on a Warden? Like, I don't understand why this is a series of ships. Because you're going to be able to like change and like get stealth armor and put like a more stealth armor on your ship to try and make it more stealthy. You're going to be able to put stealth components in there, make it more stealthy. You're going to be able to do like stuff like that and really fine tune your ship to what you want to do. So I don't see why this is a series. I don't know. It's in a questionable place at the moment. It's one of these, we're just going to need to wait and see what CIG does with it. I really wouldn't be surprised if along the road it gets retconned into just all being the Vanguard series, and then these are sort of pre-made builds, so to speak. So it's had its armor fine-tuned and its modular bay into the Harbinger configuration of the Vanguard. That would make more sense to me. But we really need to wait and see where it goes. A lot of people still really like the Vanguard. It is a really cool looking ship. It is aesthetics wise, until the Scorpius came along, it was my favourite in the looks department of all the fighters. So yes, moving on next to the Vulcan. The Vulcan is a support ship, and you can quickly see if you look into the military why the military would really want one of these, because it is all about refueling and repair. So you can see the military wanting several of these to facilitate their combats and all that. If a tank gets stranded out in the fighting, manages to defeat its enemies with its guns, but its like engine's completely knackered, you send one of these out, it refuels it, repairs it, or maybe it's just ran out of fuel, I don't know, and this thing goes out, refuels it, repairs it, gets it back in operation, and back, hey presto, it can get back into the fight, or it can get back to base to get a better repair job done if that is necessary too. It's a support ship in every way, shape and form. Not just for combat situations. You'll probably see civilians flying around in these quite a lot. offering assistance. It's going to be great at roadside assistance, that kind of thing. Like, oh, you ran out of fuel in the middle of the verse. This Vulcan will come top you up, and they'll charge you a premium price over buying it just from the regular fuel pump, just so you can get back into the game, back trading, back doing whatever you were going to do. It is support ship. That's what it says in the tin. Going to be great for the military. Going to be great for civilians. I feel like there's a very big sort of niche of players that really want this style of gameplay. They want to be the support, they want to go around helping people, and they want to make their money doing that sort of stuff. And even though that is quite a niche thing, it is one I see quite often. So not to the amount where I think that it's going to be, the market's going to be flooded and it's going to be cheap as chips for people to do this. I still think we're probably going to need NPCs going around doing this too, just till there's enough people doing it. But it is a niche nonetheless, and one I've seen around. And if that is the people that like this sort of gameplay, this is going to be your entry level into that. This is going to be one of your best ships for doing that, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is like the one ship you want to buy outside a game for the people that like this niche, because the people that tend to like this niche tend to love this niche. They want to be doing it most of their time, and it seems to be quite a good laid back way to do it. I expect a lot of time people are going to let these ships just go by. Even like pirates are going to be like, oh, we're not going to take out the Vulcan. Like, it's just got some basic, unless they're really hurting for supplies, they're going to be like, it's just got supplies, it's just got like a wee bit of fuel and ammo, or it might not even have any ammo, and it's just going to help someone. It's kind of like how, you know how there's, was it the Geneva Convention? I think I might be getting the names muddled up. This is not my area of expertise by a long shot. But basically, any medical, you've got that cross, you stick on medical stuff, and like, you do not attack or damage that stuff. It's written rules of war. It is a war crime to damage these vehicles. They're not there to fight, they're there to save lives. And so you've got like the military ambulances that have got those crosses on them, and other vehicles. I see these Vulcans, people will just automatically go, you know what, we'll just do something similar with this. We don't want to kick a guy when he's down, kind of thing. We'll let this guy go save him. And there will be some players that will be thinking like that, and obviously there's going to be players that don't. NPCs, I think by default, will probably be like that, but with players, you never know. Like, but I do expect it will get a free pass some of the time because of that. And again, I'm going off and I'm talking about theory crafting. I'm meant to be giving everyone a brief description. So with that all said and done, I think that's going to wrap up today's video. I feel like I did a pretty bad job of trying to keep the descriptions brief today, but oh well, it's all fun. It's all hopefully letting people know what all the ships are. So I hope you've all enjoyed this. I shall see you all next time. My lighting has really been killing me, and I've been trying to get this wrapped up before the lighting gets too bad. Because the sun, I can't control the sun, and I've got as much curtain up there as I can get to block it. See you all next time. Bye.